Trouble was an Atlanta rapper who has been on the grind for a minute. Originally coming out of the east side neighborhood Edgewood, which is a part of Zone 6, Trouble had been steadily stacking his industry credibility for a minute. He had collabs with Drake, The Weeknd, Migos, Lupe Fiasco, and T.I. Most importantly, Trouble had the love of his city behind him. While he may not have been the most mainstream artist out there, he built a true devoted fan base which helped attract these A-list artists who were all down to work with him. In 2017, he signed with Mike Will Made It's label, a great look for him, and things really took off when Drake dropped his song Bring It Back featuring Trouble. But the way Trouble passed was nothing short of tragic. He was actually visiting a woman in a nearby Atlanta suburb when a man named Jermichael Jones broke into the apartment and started firing. Trouble didn't know Jones, but apparently Jones was in a domestic dispute with the woman who lived there. Trouble was shot in the chest and killed. He was only 34 years old. PNB Rock's death really took the world by surprise. He had a tough childhood growing up in Philly, spending a lot of time going in and out of juvie. He wrote his first mixtape while in prison, the project that blew up his career and got him signed to Atlantic. He had the dream career, several Billboard hits, collabs with the entire industry, just on top of the world. On September 12, 2022, PNB was robbed and shot while eating at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles in LA. Before he died, PNB actually saved the life of his girlfriend by throwing her under a table. PNB's death sparked a lot of controversy and discussion, in part because his girlfriend was accused of tagging their location on an IG story. This kicked off some speculation that PNB's killers might have pulled up to Roscoe's after seeing where he was on IG. She took a lot of heat for that. Everyone had something to say. Even Nicki Minaj and Kodak Black had something to say, so it got deep. His death also generated a lot of talk about rappers losing their lives in LA, a city notorious for having more active gang members than anywhere else in the country. Almost 2 weeks after PNB was murdered, the LAPD arrested 3 people. One of them was a 17-year-old juvenile who, along with his dad, Freddie Trone, was charged with first-degree murder. Another one of the most heartbreaking losses the rap game suffered in 2022 was the death of Takeoff. Takeoff founded the Migos alongside his cousin Offset and his uncle Quavo. They all came up together in Atlanta. And Takeoff got a lot of attention too, especially with his unique flow and voice and delivery. Like, everybody loved Takeoff. After Drake jumped on the Versace remix, the Migos became bona fide superstars that dominated the charts for years with hits like Motorsport, Walk It, Talk It, Stir Fry, and Bad and Bougie. After going on such an influential run, the Migos broke up in 2022. Takeoff and Quavo, however, continued to work under the alias Uncle Few, dropping an album called Only Built for Infinity Links. Takeoff is clearly at the top of his game and showing absolutely no signs of slowing up. Take and Quavo released a video for their single Messy on Halloween Day. However, just hours later, Takeoff was shot in an altercation outside a Houston bowling alley. Take and Quavo were celebrating with Josh Price, son of the notorious mob ties figure Jay Prince, who has built a reputation as one of the most feared players in hip-hop. During a dice game, an argument broke out involving Quavo. Just moments later, gunshots went off, striking Takeoff in the head and torso. Like so many other murders in hip-hop, footage of Takeoff's dead body was put through social media, which caused an immediate uproar. There's still a lot of speculation as to who's responsible for Takeoff's death, with some rumors saying he might have gotten killed by friendly fire. And to this day, nobody's been arrested or come forward with any additional information. In a million years, no one would guess that this rapper's murder was not only connected to the Russian mafia, but corrupt FBI agents too. Right before his baby was born, Lil Phat was gunned down in one of the safest neighborhoods in Atlanta. What nobody knew at the time is that his death was connected to not only hitmen hired by a Russian mobster, but also a corrupt FBI agent who helped cover his tracks. Lil Phat was only 14 years old when he got signed to Pimp C's Trill Entertainment. By the time he was 19, he had showed up and showed out on a bunch of Trill Entertainment albums while holding down his own shows in Atlanta. This man was set up for success. Unfortunately, everything changed on June 7, 2012. Lil Phat was at Atlanta's Northside Hospital waiting for his fiancée to give birth to his baby daughter. But he would never get a chance to meet his own kid. While sitting in a parked car, Lil Phat was shot 4 times. Cops swarmed the parking garage trying to figure out if the hospital was being targeted by an active shooter. But it was too late. The shooters were gone, and Lil Phat was pronounced dead after being rushed to the ER. He was still only a teenager. The investigation into Lil Phat's death kicked off one of the most insane stories in hip-hop history. When cops went to Lil Phat's house, they found the whole place torn apart as if shooters headed to his crib and just ransacked it. The police determined that Lil Phat was killed in retaliation for stealing 10 pounds of weed. This led the police to tying Phat's murder to a man named Mani Shalpayev. Back in the 90s, Mani was a crime boss for the Russian mafia in New York. He got arrested by the FBI on conspiracy charges related to extortion, kidnapping, and arson. The thing is, Mani had zero problems with snitching on anyone he was with. He ratted on his partners in exchange for protection. But after that, Monty got arrested again for running a stolen luxury car ring that spanned 3 different states. He got jammed up and snitched again. Safe to say, do business with him at your own discretion. Because he was a reliable FBI informant, Monty did less than 3 years and was set free. After that, Monty had no problem setting up another luxury car rental service and was sometimes accused of selling stolen cars. But the cops wouldn't do anything about it because anytime they made a move against Monty, the FBI would step in and tell him to keep away from him. To make it simple, this Russian mobster was basically allowed to do whatever he wanted because the FBI wanted to keep him in their own pocket. He was free to use the FBI connections to bail him out whenever he got into a jam. It just so happens that Monty's biggest customer was Lil Fat, and the car that Lil Fat was killed in was one that he leased from Monty. Lil Fat and Monty had business ties with one another, and Monty decided to strike back at Fat when they had a dispute about stolen weed. Since Monty had access to the GPS location of his cars, he knew where Fat would be and provided the location to a hired shooter who would kill Fat at the hospital. To recap, this is a man on the hook of paying hitmen to kill a teenager, and the FBI agents is still protecting him. And all that is because Monty's FBI handler was big as a crook as he was. He would ask Monty for expensive gifts to keep him satisfied. He pretty much used Monty as a personal sugar daddy in exchange for looking the other way. Obviously, this meant the investigation into Monty reached the higher-ups. While the drug dealer and gunman who directly took part in Lil Fat's death were sent to prison, Monty got off. The FBI investigated Monty's handler and basically cleared him of any wrongdoing, so they both got away with it. And after that, he went right back to dealing stolen luxury cars. When EBE bands first popped up in the rap game, you knew he was unique. And by unique, I mean he was the only white rapper coming out of Chicago when the drill wave started taking off in the 2010s. Right away, people got curious as to what this white kid from Chicago was doing with pints of waving around extendos. People were tapped in. EBE bands broke boundaries in Chicago's in more ways than just one. Bands was tapped in with the Black P-Stones, a Chicago street set whose history dates back to the Nation of Islam and black nationalism. EBE bands was tight with a crew who called themselves the Titanic Stones, which meant Bands was not just some poser who decided to pick up a microphone. He had street connections and affiliations that really gave him some legit credibility within Chicago. EBE bands used both his music and his gang connects to beef with other artists from the city at the time. On June 1st, EBE was officially declared missing after police failed to locate him during a welfare check. No one could figure out what happened to him or could find a way to track him down. Then, 2.5 weeks later, cops stumbled upon his mutilated body. It was said that he was dead for at least a month at that point. During the investigation, cops arrested 2 people connected with EBE's murder, saying that they kidnapped him, beat him to death with baseball bats, drug his body out to the woods, and set it on fire. The sheer insanity and viciousness of this murder completely shocked fans. The way EBE was murdered was so violent that it had to have been personal. And this was confirmed by EBE's manager when he revealed that one of his accused killers was none other than one of his closest friends, William Arazit. Arazit was convicted of killing EBE bands, but somehow he escaped custody and went on the run for over a year. The cops caught up to him in 2021 and sent him to prison for life. At this point, the motives behind EBE's death still remain a mystery. While it's possible that EBE and Arazit had a personal falling out, the cops found EBE's house completely ransacked as if someone was looking for something. We might never get the answers as to why EBE was killed, but him, at 23 years old, a white artist, made a massive imprint on the Chicago drill scene and will forever be respected in that realm. Nipsey Hussle grew up in South Central LA where he reps Crenshaw hard. He dropped out of high school and became affiliated with the Rolling 60s neighborhood Crips, one of the largest gangs in the city. As an artist, Nip distinguished himself by his value of independence and ownership above everything else. Part of what made Nip such an icon in hip-hop was his super strategic attitude about business, founding his own record label, All Money In, launching his own clothing brand, and most famously, making sure he kept all of his masters. Nip was so confident about the quality of his music that he only made 1,000 copies of his tape Crenshaw and revealed he was selling them for $100 a pop. And the confidence paid off because Jay-Z personally bought 100 and he sold out in 24 hours. Nipsey had just pulled up to a store to link up with a friend who just got released from prison. He wanted to make sure his mans came back clean. That's just the type of dude he was. So, he brought him to the store. While he was there, he crossed paths with a man named Eric Holder, another 60s Crip who was grabbing food nearby. Nip and Holder had a conversation where Nip spoke on rumors that Holder was a snitch and asked Holder to bring his paperwork together. The conversation was chill and in passing. Nip probably didn't even think anything of it at the time, but it definitely immediately rubbed Holder the wrong way, and he left feeling very disrespected. Minutes later, Holder walked back to the parking lot with 2 guns and started to open fire. Nipsey was shot at least 10 times, and it's recorded that his last words were, "He shot me." When Nip hit the ground, Eric Holder actually ran over, kicked him in the head, then took off, jumped into a car with a random woman and forced her to drive off. Nip was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Nipsey Hussle's murder sent shockwaves throughout not just LA, but the entire world. A lot of the community OGs jumped to action to make sure that Nip's death didn't lead to violent reprisals on the street. There were memorials and visuals in damn near every city in America. The president of Iran even sent out a tweet to pay tribute to Nip. Not only was everyone stunned by just how senseless and random Nip's death was, but hip-hop was legitimately mourning losing one of the greatest and most consistent leaders in our generation. Nipsey's funeral was held at the Staples Center. The only person before Nip to have a funeral at the Staples Center was Michael Jackson. So that just goes to show you the impact that this man had, especially in LA. Not to mention that the 20-mile plus funeral procession had thousands of fans gathered on the streets for hours. 2 days after Nip was killed, Eric Holder was arrested by LAPD. There's still a lot of conspiracy theories circulating about the motivations behind Nip's murder. It was revealed that the LAPD constantly kept the Marathon clothing store and Nip under surveillance. Nipsey consistently spoke about police brutality in his music and interviews, and the LAPD responded by labeling him a gang leader. Given how notoriously corrupt LA cops are, it's no surprise that there's rumors that the cops played a role in Nip's assassination. Nothing's been proven, but there's enough shadiness to at least make people wonder. Especially because Nip had an organized sit-down with the LAPD to take place on April 1st, which would have been the day after his death. The culture and his community definitely felt Nip's death, but no one felt it more than his own family. Nip had 2 children, including a son with actress Lauren London, who he had been with for nearly 6 years. Between ATL and the game, Lauren is beloved as California royalty, and her bond with Nipsey only cemented that further. When Nip died, Lauren committed to upholding his legacy, speaking at his funeral to tell the world the marathon continues. In 2018, Honeycomb Brazy made waves in the South when he dropped a 7-minute video on YouTube called Freestyle, racking up over 70 million views. That track alone immediately solidified Brazy as being up next. It took Brazy a long time to take rap serious, and even then, any momentum he picked up in his career was stalled by prison, violence, and tragedy. Brazy was so heavy in the streets that he ended up going to war with the Gulf Coast Cartel and made it out to tell the story, but not at a light price. Honeycomb Brazy's street ties date back to his parents. When he was growing up, his mom and his dad were both in and out of prison. He caught his first charge when he was just 10 years old for breaking and entering. When he was 13, he shot and paralyzed his cousin because of a money disagreement that he had with his father. Brazy was only at a juvie for a week when he got hit with an attempted murder charge after he shot a man in the leg and robbed him. Brazy did 4 years for that charge, and when he got out, he immediately caught a body. Ladarius Stank Moore was a childhood friend of Brazy's. When Stank showed up at the apartment that he lived at with his girlfriend, he was surprised to find Brazy there. The two started arguing, a fight broke out, and Brazy ended up shooting Stank. Brazy went on the run, but the cops eventually caught up to him. It took damn near a year in court, but Brazy ended up beating the murder case. Even though Brazy managed to walk on the murder charges, Stank's death forever changed the way he operated. Stank was well beloved and had a great reputation, which meant that Brazy made a lot of enemies in the aftermath of his murder. One of those enemies was Stank's uncle, the last person on earth you would want to fuck with. Stank was related to Darren Southall, a kingpin who moved drugs all over the South and was connected to Mexico's Gulf Cartel. Southall did time on drug charges before, but since getting out of prison, he built a sophisticated network of street-level dealers and connects. His goal was to insulate himself legally as much as possible, so he set up his organization with the mafia-like hierarchy. Brazy was marked for death by the same friends he grew up with. He wasn't safe in his own town. After getting out of prison, Brazy was shot at multiple times. After being shot in the head, he landed in a coma for a week. The doctor told Brazy he would probably never walk again, but he beat the odds and proved them wrong. It took him months to recover, but he did get back on his feet. Brazy still had a bounty on his head though. During an IG live stream, Brazy was posted up in his car when a BMW pulled off and let 100 shots off at him and his crew. Surveillance video captured Brazy's crew running through fire, but Brazy walked away, the shooting completely unharmed. In 2021, Brazy's opposition took the war to a new level. Shooters pulled up to Brazy's grandparents' home and opened fire. Neighbors claimed they heard over 100 shots let off. After shooting and killing Brazy's grandmother and grandfather, the shooters set the house on fire with the bodies still inside. It was so brazen and violent that it made national headlines. Brazy feared his opposition would take the beef with him to his family and now his worst fears have come true. On an IG story post that Brazy made after his grandparents' murder, he admitted that they had been dragged into something that did not involve them at all. Brazy wanted to get revenge on his family's behalf, but he was sent back to prison over another parole violation. A year later, Darren Southall was arrested and charged of being directly involved with the murder of Brazy's grandparents. On August 4th, 2020, FBG Duck was out shopping for his son's birthday in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood when all of a sudden 2 vehicles pulled up on the block. 4 gunmen jumped out of cars and started spraying FBG Duck and his crew with bullets, completely destroying the Dolce & Gabbana storefront and causing mayhem in broad daylight. The shooters then took off, leaving FBG Duck, one of the city's most veteran drill rappers, dead on the street. FBG Duck's murder was shocking, but it also closed a chapter on one of the longest running beefs in the city's history. In 2020, FBG Duck put out Dead, a song dedicated to kicking dirt on the dead ops. The track was incredibly disrespectful and even had him bringing up O.D. Perry again, who he dissed years earlier. He even referenced making Chicago legends, claiming it was just about business, and went right back on his initial promise to not diss the dead. Less than a month after Dead Bitches dropped, FBG Duck was shot to death outside Dolce & Gabbana. He was only 26 years old. In the aftermath of the shooting, Duck's mom claimed that the police kept the ambulance from getting to Duck in time, but there's no confirmation to back this up. In addition, someone uploaded the 12-minute video to YouTube that showed Duck dying and bleeding out on the street. Rumors floated on the street that Dead crossed the line and motivated the shooters to come after Duck. An informant allegedly told Chicago police and the FBI that the BDs had put a $50,000 bounty on FBG Duck's head and then later upped the price to $100,000. This is easily considered one of the biggest bounties to put on any gang member's head in Chicago history. A lot of people thought the circumstances of the shooting, it happening near Miracle Mile in broad daylight in a full view of witnesses, would lead to the people being arrested fast. For nearly a year, it looks like there was little progress in FBG Duck's murder case, but during that time, fans on the internet started noticing O-Block members posting incriminating info on social media. In one interview with Boss Top, one of Chief Keef's former proteges that took place about a month after Duck was killed, a vlogger asked about what happened to Duck. In the video, people clearly see a silver Chrysler 300 parked outside, the same make and model of the car that was used to hit FBG Duck. While this could possibly be chalked up to crazy coincidence, it definitely made some people think twice. Social media might be good for brand building or showing off, but let's be real, if you don't watch what you post, that could end your life. In the cases of both PNB and Pop Smoke, both were major established artists who got caught off guard when their locations were shared on IG. When you think about how talented and successful those guys were, you realize how tragic it is that such a small mistake ended with them losing their lives. But on September 12th of 2022, PNB Rock's legacy came crashing down to a tragic end. PNB was out in South LA with his girlfriend Stephanie Selvin Yuhang having lunch at the world's famous Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles when an assailant pulled a gun on him and ordered PNB to give up his jewelry. PNB apparently refused and argued with the robber, who then opened fire, shooting PNB multiple times, snatched his valuables, and ran from the restaurant. PNB was later pronounced dead at the hospital. Almost immediately after PNB was killed, LAPD Chief Michael Moore said that they believed an IG post geotagging PNB's location led the shooter to him. Apparently, PNB's girl Stephanie had put up a picture of them at Roscoe's together, and some believe that her post was indirectly responsible for his death. So at the same time that PNB's friends, family, and collaborators were mourning him, social media was going ape shit, trying to blame his girlfriend for the robbery. Nicki Minaj publicly attacked PNB's girl without naming names, indirectly mocking her for giving away PNB's whereabouts to, quote, show waffles and some fried chicken. And Kodak Black went on IG to say that PNB's girl should commit suicide. God damn. Cardi B and DJ Academics both jumped on social media to defend Stephanie, with Cardi saying it was super unlikely that the shooter was directly monitoring Stephanie's IG page. In the weeks after PNB Rock's murder, the LAPD arrested 3 people in connection with the shooting. The cops claimed that the trigger man who shot PNB was a 17-year-old juvenile. They also arrested Freddie Trone, who was not only the alleged shooter's father, but is also accused of being the getaway driver. Freddie Trone's wife, Chantel, was charged as an accessory after the fact. Over a year later, as of just a couple days ago, the cops charged 2 more people in connection with PNB's murder. They believed a man named Tremont Jones might have actually been the one to alert thieves of PNB's whereabouts. Pop Smoke was maybe one of the biggest trailblazers for his generation. He was born and raised in Brooklyn and had an incredibly short but super impactful career. In 2019, he popped off with Welcome to the Party, which quickly shot up to become New York City's summer anthem. Welcome to the Party scored a high-profile remix from Nicki Minaj, while Pop Smoke got frequently compared to another New York rapper who famously took the industry by storm. Fans, critics, and music industry insiders started comparing Pop to 50 Cent, saying he had the same kind of charisma and hit-making ability that made 50 one of the most successful rappers of all time. Pop's follow-up single, Dior, was another hit that later earned a Grammy nomination. The sad part is that Pop Smoke was not alive to savor the moment. On February 19th of 2020, Pop and his crew were visiting Los Angeles when they rented a home in the Hollywood Hills through Airbnb. And it's there that Pop would end up making a mistake that would ultimately cost him his life. Pop and members of his entourage ended up posting a bunch of pics on IG. Thing is, one of those photos had the address of Pop's Airbnb for anyone who wanted to zoom in and take a closer look. Pop's record label urged him to take down the pics just a few hours later, but by then it was too late. The damage had already been done. Around 4 a.m. that night, Pop had just returned after spending a late-night session in the studio. When he jumped in the shower, a woman he had brought home that night was attacked by 4 masked assailants who held a gun to her head. They ran up on Pop while he was in the shower, and when he fought back, they pistol whipped and shot him. LAPD arrived at the Airbnb and rushed Pop to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead at Cedar Sinai a few hours later.